Welcome to Zeitgeist. Today we share one of those experiences, one so deep, so clear, that it must not only be told, but passed on. Not for sensation, but for truth, for remembrance, for healing. This is the story of Crystal McVea. She was clinically dead for a full 12 minutes. And what she saw in that time might completely change how you see life. I was dead for 12 whole minutes, and what I experienced in that time split my life in two, the before and the after. I was a teacher, a mother, completely ordinary, and then, suddenly, my body stopped working. It wasn't a flash of light, not a shock, it was just stillness, peace. And then, something I never thought possible. I always believed that after death there's just nothing. Maybe darkness, silence. But what I saw was so real, so far from everything I had believed, that to this day I dream of it at night, and not always peacefully. Not because it was terrifying, but because it was so profound I can never forget it. In those 12 minutes I understood more than in 36 years on Earth. I encountered a light that filled me completely. I didn't hear a voice, yet I knew exactly what it was saying. And I saw who I truly am, who we all truly are, and why we forgot what we already knew. This is my story, not a fairy tale, not a dream, but what happens when everything stops and something greater begins. I'm Crystal McVea, and I was dead, and what I saw there still keeps me awake at night. I still remember the exact moment when my breath suddenly stopped. I was in the hospital, just in for a routine checkup, nothing to be afraid of, just standard procedure. And yet, all at once, there was this strange sensation, as if my body had forgotten how to be a body. My lungs no longer filled. I wanted to breathe, but nothing came. The world around me slowed down, became muffled, like I was sinking underwater. I still heard someone calling for help, and then everything went still. When my heart stopped beating, I left my body. It wasn't a jolt, not painful, more like gently slipping out of a tight jacket. I saw the doctors standing around my bed, frantic, serious expressions on their faces. But I wasn't there anymore. I was above them, watching them, calmly, almost indifferently. There was my body, but I felt no connection to it. I knew I was dead, and yet I was more awake than ever before. I could hear every word, every sound. I saw them working on my chest, trying to bring me back. But I felt no fear, no panic. It was as if someone had lifted the entire weight of my life from me. Everything was light, bright, warm. There was no more pain, only clarity. And then, the light came. It wasn't just bright, it was alive. It felt as though the light knew me, as if it remembered me. I felt myself filled with a peace I had never known. No thoughts of the past, no regrets, only the feeling of finally being home. And for the first time in my life, I knew I am more than this body, more than my name. And what came next was not the end, but the beginning of something unimaginable. I don't know exactly when I crossed the threshold. There was no moment where someone said, "Now you're on the other side." It felt more like gradually stepping from a tight, enclosed space into boundless vastness. Time no longer existed, not in the sense of minutes or hours. Everything was happening all at once, and yet in perfect stillness. I wasn't moving, and yet I was everywhere. I didn't feel lost. I felt called back, as if something had been waiting for me for a very long time. And the closer I came to the light, the more all memories tied to pain, shame, or fear dissolved. What remained was just me, in my purest form. This light wasn't simply bright, it was alive. It was love, but not the kind of love I had ever known on Earth. It wasn't conditional, or wavering, or fragile. This love was absolute, unchanging, pure being. I can't say I saw anything, not with earthly eyes, but I knew without doubt that I was being seen deeply, completely, through and through. And I felt that I was fully accepted, not despite my flaws, but because of them. I was loved, not for what I had done, but for who I truly am. Then two beings of light appeared beside me. They weren't human, and yet they felt more familiar than anything I'd ever known. They had no faces, no voices, no physical form in the earthly sense, yet they radiated a presence, a silent wisdom, deep kindness, and infinite patience. I didn't speak to them. No words were needed. Everything I thought was received. Everything I felt was understood. It was communication without speech, and yet clearer than any conversation I had ever had. I just knew they were with me, that they were there to guide me. And then, it was there. No image, no sound. And yet I knew, without the slightest doubt, I was in the presence of God. Not as an idea, not as a concept, but as pure, vibrating truth. I didn't recognize God with my eyes. I remembered. Suddenly, I knew that I had always been connected to this being that I had just forgotten. It wasn't a man. It wasn't a woman. It wasn't a throne. It was an all-encompassing consciousness that completely permeated me. And in that moment, I knew the light is God, and I was part of it, just like you, just like anyone who has ever loved. I had come home. I don't know how long I was there, because where I was, there was no time. No clock, no urgency, no obligations. Only the feeling of being whole, complete, healed. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about my children, or the world, or even myself. I was simply love, wrapped in it, merged with it. I was home, in a place where nothing was missing, where I didn't have to prove anything anymore. And yet, in the midst of that sacred stillness, I suddenly felt a question being placed before me. No voice, no command, just an impulse. Do you want to stay or return? I knew instantly what the question meant and what it demanded. To return meant pain, the body, separation, doubt, all the things I had already left behind. And yet I felt that the decision wasn't mine alone. I wanted to stay. I never wanted to go back. Everything in me longed for that place. But then I felt a presence, deeper than my longing. It was gentle, yet unwavering. The beings of light and the divine presence communicated with me in a way that cannot be put into words. You have to go back. You have a task. I knew I wasn't allowed to stay, and I also knew that I would return someday. The moment of return was like falling through a narrow, cold tunnel, as if slipping into a wet, far too tight suit. My body felt foreign, broken, painful. The shell I returned to no longer felt like me. It was limited, heavy, unclear. I woke up in the hospital connected to machines. The doctors stood around me, and the first thing I said was, "I know all of you." They looked at me confused, thought I was disoriented or drugged, but I had seen them. I had watched them when I was dead. I knew exactly who they were, and it wasn't a dream. Since then, my life has been forever changed. I no longer fear death, but I hold a deep reverence for life. I now know that nothing in this world lasts except the love we give, and I know that every pain, every separation, every failure is only a veil, lying over a truth we have forgotten. I came back with one core understanding. We are not alone. We have never been alone, and we don't have to die to realize it. But sometimes, it takes death to truly begin to live. I was dead for 12 minutes. And in that time, I experienced something I had never searched for on earth, and yet had missed my entire life: unconditional love. I came back because I wasn't done yet, because I was meant to remember and to remind others of what we all carry deep within us. Not as proof, not as religion, but as experience. If you've watched this video, maybe it's because you are also remembering, because deep inside you feel that there is more than pain, more than forgetting. Maybe this is the moment when you stop being afraid and begin to truly live. I now know no one dies alone, and no one is ever truly lost. What I brought back wasn't knowledge you can study. It was a feeling, a truth. And even if I wasn't allowed to keep everything, the light I saw still carries me through the darkness today. If you ever doubt whether you are loved, you are, without condition, without question, without exception. I am Crystal McVea, and I was dead, but I learned that death is not the end, it's a return, and what truly carries us doesn't disappear with the last breath. It begins right there.